morning and risings. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton, Sonia Poulton, Sonia.
Good morning and grand risings to you all, you wonderful people. We are not hanging around today. We have a busy day ahead of us. It is Friday, the 24th of January, 2025. It's 9 a.m. GMT. Thank you for being here. I hope Sonia talks about the multitude of chances. I think that's the multitude of chances that the authorities had to stop Axel Rudakubana. There's so many comments already in the chat, but I think that's what that comment said. And yes, absolutely. We will be drilling down on that. Absolutely, unquestionably. Hello and welcome to everybody to our show, wherever you are watching us, be that on YouTube or X or Rumble or Spotify. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Hello, Maria. Hello, Sonia and friends from Australia. How are you? Morning, wonderful people, says Abster and MT70 and Mickey the Mouse and Katie. Good morning to you all. And Silly says, and Chris Evans and Hunting Swan and GCR and all of you, and of course our two wonderful mods, Soul Sound and Crazy Bunny. Thank you for being here. We truly appreciate it. We truly appreciate it. What an extraordinary week. Extraordinary week. Yes, it has been. Huge week, from Trump's inauguration to the sentencing of Axel Rudakubana in the UK. So let's get into it. First of all, my apologies. If you've sent me an email and I've not responded, it's hard to keep up, but I do try, honestly. And I'm still finding emails from 3 weeks ago that I haven't seen, so bear with me. Let me tell you what is on today's show. We'll be joined at 9:10 by Earl and Martin from the Freedom Alliance. They'll be drilling down on the climate and nature bill, which is causing so much concern for so many of our viewers. At 9:30, we'll be joined by commentator and author Nick Buckley, who will be going in on the Southport murders and the cover-up of them. And at 10 a.m., I'll be joined by Michael Tova. He'll be joining us from the US to talk about his faith and the importance of protecting children. Of course, there is no higher calling, is there? Hair down day, says Armand. Yet, absolutely breezy out there, Armand, absolutely breezy. And we'll also be looking at the good, bad and ugly of Trump's first week. WEF, state assets to the rescue. Have you seen them all piling in there? Shill Spice, she was there. And we'll also be looking at the assisted dying duplicity taking place in Parliament. Plus, Prince Harry's fresh win against British journalism. And whatever you think about Prince Harry, trust me when I say this is a good thing. This is a good thing. We'll also, as usual, be drilling in or dialing down, or however you want to look at it, at geoengineering, at our geoengineering watch spot. And at the end, we'll be looking at the power of being a disruptor. Good morning to you, Jacqueline. How are you all? No, I don't trust Musk, sadly, said No Fuss. Well, I think straight in there right from the off. Let's go into it, shall we? Oh, wait, have I? What are we doing, people? What have I got here? Oh, it's odd. I had an odd thing then on the screen. It was so odd. What subjects today? I've just done it, Gary. I've just told you. So let's start. Let's kick off with the inauguration, shall we? The inauguration of Commander-in-Chief Donald Trump. Donald Trump. What are your thoughts, people? I noted a comment from Caroline Shivey on Monday's show. Comments left saying you should look up the word inauguration, meaning formal induction into office. Now break it down. Auguration meaning the practice of augury, the art, ability, or practice of auguring, divination, a sign of something coming, an omen. Well, never has a truer word been said, frankly. Never has a truer word been said. Trump's first week and he's hit the ground running, of course. And first of all, it looked fantastic, didn't it? We heard lots of great stuff. End net zero, end DEI, no more gender mutilation, slash foreign aid, protect free speech, all great stuff. And I don't know if you saw, but when Trump was saying all of this, and obviously on one side was Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. And when Trump actually said about reinstating and reinstalling free speech to the US, Joe Biden literally looked like something really nasty and whiffy had gone underneath his nose. The idea of free speech is too much to those people. There's loads of controversies, of course, that took place on that day. People were like, why didn't he have a hand on the Bible? He doesn't have to have a hand on the Bible. And then there was, of course, all of the distractions and controversies about Elon Musk throwing his various signs. Was it just me, or did Elon Musk look as high as a kite for most of that inauguration? Very curious stuff, obviously, very curious stuff. Let's have a look at some of your comments. Trump was the best option. Did anyone notice what Trump said after signing the JFK files? Give this pen to JFK Jr. But what? I'm here. Sunstock. What on earth is going on? What is going on? Love. What's that? What's going on? Yes, son. He did. I have no idea. They're busy chatting, and that's what we love about around here. Absolutely, we do. And of course, so as I say, there was all that controversy, wasn't there, about Elon Musk, but not to worry, because Benjamin Netanyahu was to the rescue, said Elon is a great friend of Israel. He visited Israel after the October 7th massacre, in which Hamas terrorists committed the worst atrocities, etc., etc., etc. You know what he's going to say. It's Benjamin Netanyahu, and not to play down anything that is done. Not at all, not at all. But just to say that he was right in there and rescuing. And Elon Musk responded by saying thank you. Because the idea that Elon Musk is somehow a Nazi and anti-Semitic is just ludicrous. X is the living Zionist social media platform these days, living. But I do agree, it certainly looked like a Sig Heil to me. But then I thought, how can it be? In a busy field, it's because he, as I say, he's king of the social media Zionist. Didn't make any sense. So I think it was just being Elon Musk, which just irritates the life out of me, frankly. But lots of people disagree online. And in fact, one of them is Senk of the Young Turks. He said, I think I tend to agree with him, because what he's actually saying is, it seems to me that Elon Musk has decided attention is the most valuable commodity, no matter how you get it. And I think that's true. I think Musk is absolutely obsessed with attention, like all true narcs will get that fuel however he can. And if that includes the optics being appalling, then so be it. Ryan Dawson said it was a Roman salute. Well, that's all right then. As long as Ryan says that, and that's all right then, right? If you listen to his whole speech, says Shalini. Yeah, but the point is the optics were bad. Come on now. The optics were bad. Surely at least people can admit that. Whether it was or it wasn't, surely at least the people can admit that the optics were bad of throwing the shapes this way and then turn around and throwing it around the other way. Because I do. I admit it was bad. It looked bad. Anyway, it wasn't the main thing. Certainly wasn't the main thing. There were all the executive orders that were taking place. And don't forget, did you see the billionaires row, by the way? The billionaires row. Wow. Look at them. Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, of course, Elon Musk. Somewhere in the background there is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And everybody's asking, where is he? Seeing as at Trump's first press conference, the first thing he does is usher in the idea of mRNA cancer jabs. Where is Robert F. Kennedy? Anybody know? He has not posted on X since the end of December, when I think he was on a skiing holiday. So I think that is very curious and very interesting. Where is he? Because obviously this is all about making America healthy again, isn't it? Billionaires will save you. Keep voting, plebs, says Plain Station. Clearly not impressed at all. But there's been a lot taken place, and we shouldn't underestimate it. Some of it is really quite mind-blowing. The withdrawal from who, I don't think should be underestimated at all. The whole issue of, from now on, Trump says there will only be two genders. Again, that is a huge, massive thing. But I think the presence of like Larry Ellison of Oracle at the conference is utterly appalling. So I'm very, very concerned about that. And then, of course, there is, as I say, people are asking, where is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? And goodness knows, where is he? This is where I spotted him last. There he is. You can see him just behind the much talked about breasts of Jeff Bezos's fiance. There he is, Robert F. Kennedy with the billionaire row. But we still haven't seen him. And he's supposed to be the health secretary, right? Health secretary. I think my favorite tweet of the day, I think it was on Wednesday, was we transitioned from the transgender agenda to the transhumanism agenda pretty quickly. Vision for the blind on X. I thought that was fantastic. But then there is the declassifying of documents, of course. The executive order that came yesterday, the declassifying of the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. As Trump was handed this, he was told what it was. He described it as a big one. He said a lot of people are waiting for this for a long time, for years, for decades. So I think that's interesting. Very interesting. It's like you have no choice but to deal with the devil at the top. That's the way it goes, yo. It's the way it goes. Sometimes that's the way it happens. But I think, and this will bring us into our next guest, I think this is one of the most interesting, and I think will ultimately sort of reverberate around the world, and that is the US exit from the Paris climate deal. And they're not happy, as you can imagine. The head of COP30 says this is going to complicate financial targets. Well, good. That's the kind of thing we want to hear. And I think on that point, I should bring in my first guest because it very much links to what they are going to be talking about with me. So let me bring them in. Here's Martin. Oh, no, wait, Michael. Michael, is that Michael who's Earl, though? Have I got that right? Is it Michael and Earl and Martin from Freedom Alliance?
I'm on this screen here.
Yes.
Sonia.
You're Earl.
No, this is Michael.
Oh, Michael, sorry. I'm going to have to take
That's all right. I'm watching.
Right. I'm going to have to kick you from the studio, but come back in, please.
Yep. That's fine, Sonia.
Thank you. Right. Sorry. We're still waiting for
That's okay, Sonia. I think
go on.
Hi, I think Earl's having trouble with his browser. So I think I'm going to be on my own this morning.
No worries. No worries at all. I just brought in our 10 a.m. guest. That's not a problem at all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, Martin. We really appreciate it. Martin Davis from Freedom Alliance. You just heard what I was saying about the US exit from the Paris climate deal, which kind of links in, well, massively links in with what we're going to be talking about today, the Climate and Nature Bill. Many people are describing this as a catastrophic threat to our future. And what we have today, of course, there's going to be the second reading of it in Parliament. Should we be as concerned about it as many people are saying, Martin?
Yes, absolutely yes. This is the proverbial wolf in sheep's clothing. If you've ever seen a bill that looks on the surface as attractive to many people, but underneath is so vague and open that it allows the government and bad actors to be able to walk anything in that they like. This is it. So if you wanted to know what the Climate and Nature Bill is,
break it down.
It's been around for a while. Yeah, it's been around for a while. With originally brought in by the Green Party in 2020, didn't get to come to pass, and was in a different guise. So they've had 4 years to perfect it. And since then it's now come in as a private members bill. So this is nothing that anybody has voted for. It was on no manifesto. It's simply been brought in as a private members bill, and only 20 MPs get to put a bill in during a year. So, and it is subject to a ballot. That ballot has appeared that this was one of the items that's come out, which in itself is an interesting point. It's been brought by
yes, go on.
It's been brought by Alex Sobel, a Labour Party from Leeds and Headingley, but has been fronted by Ros Savage, a New Lib Dem. And so it's got cross-party support. And the most interesting thing about it is that it has a vast amount of propaganda behind it. There is a 0-hour group which claims to have the support of 190 MPs, all sorts of varieties of people. So not a majority at all, but a substantial number. And they've been putting propaganda out for the last 3-4 months leading up to this. And yet it appears to have only caught the zeitgeist for the last week and a half, maybe 2 weeks.
That's what happens. That is often what happens. Absolutely. So tell us why we should be so concerned about it. What are the most egregious elements of this bill? Are people protesting today, I think?
Yes, and rightly so, Sonia. There's two parts to it. There's a net zero part and there's a biodiversity part. And that's the climate and the nature side of things. They're not utterly distinct, but essentially there are 8 objectives to this bill. And what the bill does is put a duty on the Secretary of State to enact a strategy to meet the measures of net zero and to meet the measures of the biodiversity Kunming Treaty. So those 8 measures then, I want to read you one. And if you bear with me, I'd like to read it twice because this is
We've got Earl with us, which is great. So, thanks, Earl. Welcome to the stage. Yes, welcome. Go on, Martin.
So section 2.3, and it is number D, part D, ensuring the end of the exploration, extraction, import of fossil fuels by the UK as rapidly as possible. That is how it's written in the bill. So I just repeat that as well. Ensuring the end of the exploration, extraction, export and import of fossil fuels by the UK as rapidly as possible. Big question on that one. Could they therefore overnight?
Right, hold on a sec, just a sec though. So some people hearing that will go, what is the problem with that? Explain to us what the problem is that. And welcome, Earl, lovely to have you with us. Explain to us exactly what the problem is with that so we can ram this home.
Martin.
Yeah, the problem with that is that the phrase as rapidly as possible allows a huge amount of latitude when it comes to actually forcing things through. Overnight, they could, as an example, extreme example, they could stop imports of oil, fossil fuels, stop imports of oil. We've already seen what happens when prices go up at the petrol pumps. Imagine if the stocks go low. A simple thing, farms run on diesel. Diesel powers the tractors. If diesel goes low, farms fail to be able to work themselves and we get food shortages, production lines stop, all sorts of things like that. And that is so vague in that sentence, or so open, I would say, in that sentence, that it allows for anything to be driven through. And that's why it's egregious.
I got you. Earl,
yes.
Explain to us, what are your concerns about this?
Well, the whole bill is ambiguous. It has
Right.
so many different avenues to explore. I mean, one of the parts is the term retrofitting, where they can, if passed into law, for instance, they can come into properties and change the way the property works, from your heating, your gas, your electric. I mean, people coming in and changing, putting solar panels on your roof or not, turning you on, turning you off for gas and electric and etc.
And this bill would give them the power to do that, to access our homes and come in and change those things around. Shocking.
With the power of legalese, not law, but the power of legalese.
Right.
Under the authoritarian regime. So if you are following this system, as much as you may think it has you in benefit, you know, removing the CO2 is removing you. That's the whole point of it. You know, they're trying to get rid of CO2, but what they don't realize is the CO2 is us, the humans. There's nothing about humans in the bill, nothing about protecting people. It's all about the benefit or getting down to this temperature, etc. But it actually means removing us. It's, in essence, it's eugenics, as far as I can see.
And do you both feel that way? Martin, do you feel that way as well, that this is eugenics, depopulation all over again?
I think there's the end games absolutely point towards that. This I feel is a stage on that road. It's nicely dressed up. It's based on science that they say is settled. Very different argument, and we could spend a whole show on that, I would imagine, Sonia. But in the way that it's driving the narrative and putting everything under, well, we're doing it for the climate and nature, it must be good. Well, actually, it's not. And when you start to do that, Bev Turner did a brilliant piece on it and on one of the GB originals in the last three or 4 days. And she described it as about being the precursor or a necessity to have digital IDs and digital mapping of consumption, production, and also, critically in this one, imports, not just what the UK produces, but imports. And every part of how that item is produced would have to have a marker on it, presumably a carbon marker on it, in order for these measures to be fully measured and therefore tracked. And what would happen then, to Earl's point, is that at an individual level, you would then be tracked as to what your consumption is. So was there something in a couple of days ago? It came out about how much protein or how much meat an individual would be able to consume if it were to meet the CO2 targets, and it's 23 grams. That's tiny. That's a mouthful. So this is where you can see it going. There's so many strands of what this can do. I've mentioned the farmers already. We mentioned individuals.
And the problem about these things, of course, is that they are literally like a snowball rolling down a hill. And that is, if you don't stop them right at these readings, you're in trouble, because they then just go on and then they get royal assent anyway, always without question. And then that's it. And it's far harder to roll things back than stop them. Right. So, Earl, in terms of that, right, one of the things that seems to be a problem is that where are the actual MPs opposing this bill?
That's a good question, Sonia. Very good question. There's about 200 plus sponsors behind the bill, and I'm not sure if anyone's aware of the CAN bill. In the last nearly 2 weeks, the amount of people that I've spoken to that don't know about this bill, that have no idea about this bill, how it's been in essence snuck into our sort of realm, is incomprehensible. So taking that into sort of the reality of where it is now, and they're talking about it. I mean, I think the Express or someone did a very small article the other day, was the only mainstream media that I've seen actually take this to the sort of to the public. Apart from that, nobody else knows about this bill. No one knows that it's his second reading, not the first, the second reading.
Yeah, crazy.
That tells you now.
Yeah.
That whoever's behind it, whoever's sponsoring it, or whatever the puppeteers are playing, they want this bill through because it allows them to do multiple things. It's an asymmetrical bill. It allows them to deal with education, with money, with finance, with CO2, with fuel, with transport, with movement. It covers so many things. It's so ambiguous, but it allows, it's legalese.
That's the problem, isn't it? It's the generalization of it. And that means it can be taken in a multitude of ways. Martin, how do you think what President Trump has been saying this week will impact the UK, if indeed it will at all, his kind of clampdown on net zero, the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement? Will it have any impact on us?
I think it will. I'm ever the optimist, but I actually genuinely think it will. There are MPs who are opposing this, absolutely. And I was expecting Reform, to be perfectly honest, to be shouting from the rooftops, bearing in mind
where are they?
Their manifesto and their policies are about ridding us of net zero. So you'd expect them to be. I have to have a shout out to Chris Littlewood of Reform, on who has actually been trying to agitate on certain things, but it's the actual MPs. What are we hearing about from Farage? Only about his Southport point. Rather than about this, which is happening today.
Right.
So but we
they're
may
not
have an
interested.
unlikely ally. A bizarre. No, but hopefully there was the point about that whether Labour are going to apply the whip to prevent this, and even Ed Miliband was suggested that he was going to try and amend the bill. Now, if this is the unlikely ally that we're looking at, and my enemy's enemy is my friend. Then we might find that it actually doesn't make it through. If it does, however, then not only have we got some MPs who are favourable to this, there is the Net Zero Scrutiny Group, which was created, I think, back in the Conservative days. So there are people who are in the corridors of power who we can agitate and leverage in there. There are also the Lords, because it still has to pass through that.
Exactly.
And there are some very, very reasonable people in there who have shouted about it before.
They're supposed to be a buffer, aren't they, for this sort of madness? That's the point. They're supposed to be a buffer for it. Earl, what do you think is likely to happen today? And what about moving forward? What can we actually do? What can people, because people listening to this are going to feel angry and helpless, but what can we do?
Well, so Martin and I are part of the Executive Freedom Alliance. We spoke to a creative consultant no more than a few days ago, and as things move through Parliament, Act, statutes, legalese, whatever you want to call it, these things happen without our knowledge or even without our say so, and it's apparently for benefit of us. We will be happy when these things happen. So we've looked at exposing the bill and its ambiguity, and potentially looking at the avenues where they're taking, where the bill could take so-called these corrupt corporations. So we're looking at avenues of where they're going to take us, what it would affect us, how it would affect us individually, as a group, as a town, as a county, and we're looking to expose the bill as it is, regardless, because it's going to take at least another year.
Exactly.
So we're looking to expose it in a sort of comedic sort of fashion, in a way with people that are knowledgeable and wise within the areas and sectors that the bill deals with. And we're still in talks now. Martin's background is part of that sort of the meeting we had about 2 days ago. So we're moving towards it, but rather than trying to fight the bill, is as you know, outside the House of Commons, House of Lords, no matter what you do, they're going to carry on doing what they do inside the House, regardless of what you say outside. So we're going to look to expose the bill and introduce it and give it to what we call the layman's of society, and let them know exactly what they're allowing to happen. So, you know, people do have the power, but they have to realize that themselves. And that's the hard thing, to allow people to understand, rather than let the others deal with it. You can actually deal with it yourself. You actually have autonomy. You have power.
And even though we really hardly trust politicians around here, and certainly very few of my viewers actually do, it would still be worth, wouldn't it, putting in an email to their politicians right now saying you need to show up and oppose this, because if nothing else, it leaves a paper trail, doesn't it?
It needs accountability,
Yes.
and also recognition of it. As I use the word ambiguity, it is massively ambiguous. And it has so many different areas where it could go into, but it will tamper with your individual existence in this country, you know, and external countries as well. The way that it works, it's legalese. And
Yes, and they like to trap us in it. Martin, before you leave us today, just tell the viewers what you want them to know, and hopefully get us all into action.
So I think this is the bill, if it goes through, that arrives at everybody's front door very quickly. And that would be in the form of taxes, that would be in the form of the problems with fuel, etc. This will hit everybody very fast, and it will hit the poorest hardest. You will be able to, if you're fortunate enough to have council elections in May, find the councillors who are opposed to this and vote for them, because local councils also have powers in this. So if it does pass eventually, then local councils will be able to manage that. So find the right people, vote them in. If we can't hit the MPs, then let's hit the local councils. And that's what I encourage. The other thing I'd say, this should be a pub conversation. This needs to be on the street, talking about it more and more frequently. And I'd encourage everybody to do that.
That's exactly it. We need to take it far and wide. Thank you both very much for joining us this morning. Very much appreciate it, everybody. Martin and Earl from the Freedom Alliance. There's a link in the description to the Freedom Alliance, so check them out, people, please. Take good care of yourself, both of you. Thank you for joining us. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you. Great to have you with us. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's only difficult because, as they say, it's only suddenly become very visible to everybody. Now, this is often the way when they want to keep bills under the radar because they know that there's going to be a problem with them. They'll do this. They will. Thank you, gentlemen, says MB. Vanessa says, thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, says Catherine. Cheers, chaps, says Marcuson. How are you all? Yes, I noted you all were, well, not all of you, but some of you were talking about Trump bringing back the mRNA. Absolutely outrageous. When I say the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's definitely the ugly. That is most definitely the ugly. And but of course, we cannot forget father of the vaccine, Operation Warp Speed. We'd be silly to. We'd be absolutely silly to. Thank you, Martin and Earl, says Katie. Good day all, says CFR Network. How are you? Castle Doctrine still stand, says Cameron. I see. Got you. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, Soul Sam, that's what it is. Warp Speed never ended, says Shug. Indeed. Trump keeping his enemies so close, he is joining them, says Craig, Somerset Squill. And of course, it is troubling, isn't it? It's problematic. One of the funniest things, I don't know if you've seen, is the kind of fallout between Elon Musk and Sam Altman. Now, Sam Altman has been accused of some heinous allegations by his own sister. And Sam Altman, of course, is going to step up for the AI for Trump. Trump said he's going to make America the absolute first in AI, artificial intelligence, and cryptocurrency. And but Elon Musk is not happy. He's kind of had his nose put out of joint with the involvement of Sam Altman. So that's going to be interesting because we are talking about massive egos here, and none of them like to have their noses put out of joint. Now, look, I know this won't have escaped any of your attention, and certainly not anybody in the UK, but since July last year, we have had some very serious problems. And it's not just Keir Starmer taking office at number 10, but an absolute tragedy happened in July of 2024 when a dance class in Southport, England, was interrupted by an absolute maniac intent on the most egregious harm. And I'm now going to be joined by Nick Buckley. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good to have you with us. I don't want to say too much about this, Nick. I want to leave it in your hands because having watched the summing up yesterday by Mr. Justice Goose, I'm so devastated by what was said there. And obviously that my pain is nothing compared to the victims of this tragedy. But where would you like to start on this, Nick?
It's a huge issue, isn't it? I mean, we could spend the next 5 hours talking about this, from the beginning of what happened to, the allegations of a cover-up, to who was involved, who knew what, how did he get a knife? Is that Amazon's fault? Is this to do with immigration?
Right.
How do we punish? I mean, it would just go on and on and on. Let's take this from a different angle, shall we? So the first thing is, every society has nutcases and lunatics. Some societies have more than others, that must be said. And this guy is obviously a nutcase to do what he did. How do we deal with that in this society? Because at the moment, all we're talking about, all the elite are talking about, and the government's talking about, are things like social media, talking about, he bought a knife off Amazon. Well, come to my house. I've got 7 huge sharp knives in my fucking drawer.
Pages actually calling him the Amazon killer. Of course, this is the murder of 3 little girls, Elsie Dot, Alice, BB. And there is, as you say, it's a huge, where to start? But the focus on social media is interesting. And then Mersey Police, of course, put out their statement yesterday after Axel Rudakubana was convicted, 52 years, but because he was 17, not quite 18, there's some lenience there in terms of his sentencing. Merseyside Police put out a statement. I feel we're still being handled by the state, Nick. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. We've been handled by the state for decades, but when this atrocity happened, they went into overdrive. Right. Because this atrocity, I mean, we think it was horrendous, but the government thought it was even worse because they thought this was going to bring them down. That's why they overreacted. That's why we have political prisoners in our country now, because the government looked at what was going on in the streets, and we had idiots on the streets throwing bricks at the police, trying to set fires to hotels. I'm against all that, but the government looked at that and went, this could bring us down here. We need to come down with an iron glove and make sure these white working class scum know their place and they better get off the street. So we're going to punish every single one of them. And one, a 54-year-old woman got sent to jail, but she was up for parole a couple of weeks ago, and she was denied parole because this punishment beating, and that's what this is for the white working class. It's a punishment beating. You will know your place in this country or else.
There is a sense of that. There definitely is. And the thing is, what the Mersey Police were saying was that the parents had asked that information pertaining to the injuries of their daughters was not put on social media, was not being discussed. Now, there's one side of us, which, of course, our heart is broken for these poor parents enduring it. But there's another side where we know we're being played by the state, that they have managed this story from beginning to end, and they are still managing it. And actually, all of those details were put into the public domain in open court by Mr. Justice Goose. We should, to a degree, be not necessarily describing them graphically. I don't think decent people do that anyway. But they're doing the same thing again, Nick. It's that chilling effect of don't talk about it in detail, isn't it?
Justice has to be seen to be done. There's no point having justice behind closed doors with secrets and, secret court appearances. Justice has to be seen to be done. And how we get that is having an open, honest criminal justice system where the general public can see what's going on and hear all the information and be told the information as if we're adults, as if we're sensible adults. But the elite, the police, the politicians don't trust us with information anymore, because every time they give us the information, we make the wrong choices, such as Brexit, such as some of these things we've voted for in the past.
Right,
And they've got,
according to them, got you, yes.
Yeah. So they've got to a stage now where, Jesus, don't tell the public anything because they're idiots, because they always make the wrong decisions. Well, they may think we make the wrong decisions, but that's only because they don't live our lives. We're sensible enough and clever enough to make the choices to improve our lives. They may disagree with those choices, but they haven't got the common sense to think that we've got a different opinion. It's all about keeping us down and keeping us under control. But let's jump to a different thing altogether in this case. I'd like to discuss the death penalty. I would like to discuss, because he's got 52 years in jail. It's not enough. I don't think justice has been served there.
They're saying he'll be 70 years old before he's eligible for parole.
Exactly. Not good enough for two reasons. First of all, that's not justice, and everybody knows that's not justice. And the more we crumble away our criminal justice system, the more likely people are to start taking the law into their own hands to administer justice. But the second point is, well, 2 points. The first thing is locking up 52 years. It's torture. It's not compassion. It's not kindness. We're torturing. I mean, even though he's a monster and a scumbag, do we want to torture him for 52 years? Or do we want to put him out of his misery, just like we do a rabid dog? Shall we just not put him out of his misery? And the benefit is, let's save tens of millions of pounds, because that's what we're going to spend now. We're going to spend, at least £10 million now over the next 50 years on his prison, on keeping him fed, keeping him safe. It'd probably be more than that, because people want to kill him. So it's going to cost us a fortune. Isn't it the kindest, the most compassionate thing to put him out of his misery?
Well, I mean, I'm not quite sure where to start with that. But first of all, I take your point, and that is, in a situation where somebody has admitted they've been kind of caught red-handed to a certain degree, right? All of the stuff that he had at home. When I saw the images of what was going on in his house, I mean, I think there are big question marks that also have to be asked about his parents, which I hope we're going to get onto shortly. But the problem for me about the death penalty is that there are so many people in our system who are innocent and who have been convicted of murder, and there are a number of people that I believe there are unsafe convictions for, and you might not agree with me. For example, Lucy Letby and Jeremy Bamber, and there are many reasons to believe that those are unsafe convictions, as one example. So what do you do in a situation like that? Because we could literally be putting to sleep, for want of a better description, completely innocent people. How do we get around that if we reintroduce the death penalty?
We introduce a modern death penalty fit for the 21st century. We have lots of caveats. We have lots of levels they have to reach. So here's an example. How about we only have the death penalty for atrocities where the atrocity was caught on video or mobile phone, where there's at least 10 witnesses who can all identify the killer, where there's solid DNA evidence, and where the person pleads guilty. Well, that's 100% case. And then people will say, but the police, you can't trust police officers. And to a certain extent, we've seen police officers lie and corrupt cases in the past. So what we do there is we have an extra offence, that it's actually a capital offence for anybody to interfere with a capital punishment case. So any police officer who messes with the evidence would face the death penalty themselves for attempted murder and perverting the course of justice. So we would only have it in extreme cases where it is not beyond reasonable doubt, where it is 100%. Because you're right, because I don't want to go back to the days where 50 years later we find out we hung someone and they didn't do it.
Right.
But those days are gone. Technology has moved on. We've all got video phones, on us all the time.
World, and unfortunately, we've many of us have now seen him enter in that dance studio. You can actually hear the music of Taylor Swift. It seems like just an ordinary Monday, doesn't it? And it's so devastating what has taken place. Really, it is. But there is all the interference. So I take your point there. I absolutely do. And many people here in the comments also take your point about kind of bringing it up to date in that kind of scenario. But there's so much political interference in this that I'm so deeply concerned that it's hiding something else. And as one example, MP Nick Timothy said he was prevented from asking when the PM and Home Secretary were informed about the rising, about the Al-Qaeda manual. He's tabled a written question for this Friday. But, I think this goes back to what you said at the start. And that is it they are concerned this is going to bring them down because a lot of the fingers will point back to them?
Absolutely. In that summer, when we had riots across the country and demonstrations, they could see the government falling. They could potentially see, the country falling, and they got scared, because we always think we're scared of the government, we're scared of the elite, and to a certain extent we are. But we should always remember there's 70 million of us, and there's a couple of hundred of them sat in Parliament. They're terrified of us. We just don't realize the power we have and how fearful they are.
I think there's another side that we also have to look at, and it's not necessarily where I'm coming from, but it is where a lot of people are coming from, and I do have to represent that. You wrote a book called England, My England. It was about the death and resurrection, as you call it, of the greatest country to ever exist, and you feel that the problem is that English people have allowed this country to be taken from us, and we have to look at that to a certain degree, because Axel Rudakubana, although he was born in the UK, his father and his parents were from Rwanda. They'd come over during the genocide. And we have to question, we know that there is a sizable chunk of people in the UK who hate us. They hate our way of life. What do we do about that?
It has to be mass deportations. And I'm not talking about deporting everybody who's ever come to the country, because my dad was an immigrant. So what do you do about people like me who are only half English? But we have invited people into our country who fit many different criteria. Some of them actually hate us and are planning the overthrow of the country. Others have come here because it was just simply better than where they were born. So they have no connection to this country. And if they can get to somewhere better, well, they would leave here and go there next as well, because they're just gypsies. They're just looking for the best deal they can get. And then you've got other people who come here and live in their little ghettos, and it's just a mini version of the country where they came from. And I say, no, that's good enough. We need integration, and then we need full assimilation, because this has happened before. 1,000 years ago, the Vikings invaded this country, took over half of England, and we had thousands of Vikings move here with a family and built farms. And over the next couple of centuries, everybody inbred, and then they became as English as anybody else. That's what we have to do with the immigrants who are here. I mean, there's at least 10 million we have to deport. And I don't mean us physically deporting them. On day one, I would like, if I became Prime Minister, day one, I would deport 10,000 foreign criminals in our jails. 12% of our jails are foreigners. Deport them. And then let's start making life harder for people we don't want in the country. Anybody who wasn't born here, I would give them a new tax code, which means they pay more tax than everybody else because they've got to pay in more. I would reduce public services that they could access to. Not necessarily NHS emergency care, because I wouldn't want anyone dying on the streets. No. But we need to say to people, you're not British. You're here to benefit the British by working, by paying taxes. You're a guest. I'd stop using the word immigrant, because immigrant implies you're here to stay. You're just a foreigner. I would use the word guest. You're here at our pleasure. And the second we don't want you here, you leave. And that's the mindset we need to start. And we need to close the borders, basically.
I mean, there's so many people saying this now. I've always been very much involved in multiculturalism. That's why I moved to London. But I do understand, and I think it's important to take account of everybody's perspective on this, because clearly we have problems, like quite very serious problems that the government are not addressing. And not only that, Rachel Reeves was at WEF this week. I don't know if you saw or heard her, but she's already talking about new processes to bring people from overseas to bring them in for work. And so obviously a big problem. Absolutely. Labour are absolutely at the forefront of this, but Conservatives were no better, even though they pretended to be. Is there anybody politically out there who actually cares about what's happening in the UK?
Oh, who knows? Who knows? I could try to name some, but you know what? They'd probably let me down in the next couple of years.
I know.
Who knows who's out there? And that my book, England, My England, is about us individually taking personal responsibility for our country. That doesn't mean we're all going to run for parliament. It doesn't mean we're going to set up our own political parties and do demonstrations on the street. But the takeover of our country by us has to start somewhere. And it starts at the individual. And it starts with us taking personal responsibility, looking after our family, our community, and then our country. It's about speaking the truth and not being a coward anymore, And when people tell you that men can become women, you say, no, they can't. Stop being a coward and just nodding along in case you get into trouble. Right. It's about you speaking to your family and friends about things that are going on. It's about us going, the king is in the all together. Start pointing at what's going wrong in the country and going, look, that's not working, is it? And stop being afraid until, as individuals, as English men and English women, until we start doing this, then nothing will change. Because what we keep doing is we keep looking at our politicians to come and fix our problems for us.
Oh, goodness me. And they're creating them in the first place. Absolutely ridiculous, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like asking the arsonist to put out the fire. Absolutely absurd. But of course, we cannot forget this male. This human being, right? Yeah. I found his behavior absolutely egregious, because at the end of the day, we do have individual responsibility. And 18, 17, you know what you're doing. I hate the fact that he was just a few days away from his 18th birthday. And so he gets kind of like these cut tariffs. But there was so much going on in that house. His father, the week before, had stopped him from getting into a cab and apparently going to do a similar thing to a school. What role do you think, if any, should we be looking at now in terms of his parents? Surely they should be under some investigation.
I don't agree with visiting the sins of the father upon the son.
Not you?
Because children are not responsible for what their parents have ever done. That's unfair. But I do believe in visiting the sins of the children upon the parents, because parents raise children. Parents are responsible for children. Even when those children are adults, parents should always take an amount of responsibility, because they're their children. So we do need to look at the mother and father of this monster and say, what the hell did you do? Where did you go wrong? Why didn't you report this then at that time? And maybe it'll come out that they did everything right. Maybe they banged their heads against social services.
It's hard being a parent. It's not easy.
Of course it is. Of course it is. So maybe they did everything right, but maybe they didn't. And maybe we have to look at this family and go, do you know what? We gave you sanctuary in this country, and this is how your son repaid us, and we're going to deport all these back to Rwanda. And maybe that's unfair on that family, but maybe that's the message we need to send to the migrant community in this country, that you all need to do better. Because if you don't raise your children right, then we deport all of you in the family, because we're not willing to accept this. And maybe the children of migrants may be better citizens if they know that their responsibility for all their family lies on their shoulder. Personal responsibility.
We have to ask more of people, in the same way as I don't think any politician should get in power unless they've done some kind of psychological testing and actually worked out in the real world. We have to ask more of people, and we're failing to do that. But the other thing that greatly concerns me, and this is an absolute failure, is this individual was reported to prevent a number of occasions. Authorities had numerous opportunities to stop him, Nick, and they didn't. What's going wrong there?
First thing I have to say is every government department's incompetent. I spent a decade working in local government. Everything is run at a competent level. And the reason why is because everything's political. Prevent was created as a political tool because of terrorism. Prevent have spent the last 10 years being told, you're not getting enough referrals of white boys. We need more white referrals. We're referring people into Prevent now, especially white kids, if they're sexist.
Yeah, ridiculous. It's a terrorist program, which of course they said they're not going to label this terrorism, but I'm not, it doesn't make sense. Even the judge had some issues with that. In law, can't legally, because he's apparently not part of any one ideology or another. But if you're manufacturing ricing and you have a number of kind of terrorist manuals, he had IRA as well, by the way, but surely that is terrorism. He brought terrorism. And I think our failure to label things as they are is also contributing to the problem.
Prevent have got a very tight terms of reference. Right. And the reason it's a very tight terms of reference is because they never wanted to be flooded with young Islamic men being referred into Prevent, because they already knew 80% of people referred into Prevent are Muslims. They didn't want it to be 99.9%. So we have to remember why Prevent was set up. Prevent was set up so the government could say, look, we're doing something about terrorism. But at the same time, we don't want to be called racist or Islamophobic. So for God's sake, hamper Prevent from taking too many Muslim referrals into it. So it's been flooded with referrals that never should be referred to. They are also being criticised. We need to be perfectly honest. We're never going to stop lunatics, every lunatic doing atrocities like this. We're never going to stop it.
Right.
And if we think we are, then that's why Prevent is under so much scrutiny and is a political tool, because we think we can't. We should be able to reduce the numbers. Prevent should only be, there should be different levels of Prevent about what they can do, but it's a political tool. And so therefore, they're not following the evidence, the referrals. It's all about, is this going to look good in the press? Are we going to be in trouble by MPs because it looks like we're Islamophobic? And that's part of the problem, political interference.
It is. And talking about political interference, what did you make of Keir Starmer coming out this week saying that describes Southport as a new threat? I'm sorry, as a journalist, this is not a new threat. What were your thoughts about that?
What he was told before he gave that speech was, Keir, for God's sake, don't use the term far right. Because every time you use that term far right, everyone laughs at us and you make things worse. So he's had to come up with a new bogeyman. And the bogeyman now is young men sat in their bedrooms on the internet. That's the new boogeyman. And it can include Muslim young men, far right young men, and he's had to come up with a new boogeyman to scare people with, because he doesn't want to use the term far right, because we all laugh in his face when he says the term far right.
Do you think there is an argument? And again, going back to what you said at the start, and I totally agree with you, and that is people who are setting fire to hotels and doing all egregious stuff like that. I'm not talking about them, but people being locked up for social media posts around this. Do you think there is an argument that they should now be released?
Never should have been sentenced, should be released right now. Will it happen? Absolutely not.
Oh.
This government is not for U-turning. This government, won't U-turn on anything. This government, it also knows it needs to make sure, it'll fail, but it needs to make sure we don't go back on the streets again at the next atrocity, because there's another atrocity coming, because there always is. So something will happen this year, and maybe people will want to go back on the streets and protest, and they'll go, oh, do I want 3 years in jail?
Right.
Oh, I best not.
Chilling effect,
he will release no one.
It's a terrible chilling effect, actually, on our freedom to assemble, our freedom to speak, all of these things. And it is deeply alarming. And I think that you alluded to this, and I want to bring it back to this. It seems absolutely clear to me that what they're going to do is, because obviously they use these atrocities in multiple ways for their agendas. We absolutely know they want to clamp down on social media. Our ability to gather on social media is, they were not prepared for that at all. So they're going to use this, aren't they, to clamp down on us on social media. And I got that impression from the Merseyside police when they were already telling us how we could and couldn't react to the atrocity.
It's all about control, isn't it? Because they know they cannot end the problems with radical Islam and our mental health epidemic and mass migration. They know they can't tackle any of that. They haven't got the backbone, they haven't got the intelligence, they haven't got the willpower, grit, determination to do anything about that. So therefore, what's the only option? The only option is to control the public. This is what every dictator and an authoritarian state always does. And we're well along that path now, because we have political prisoners. And now they're going to clamp, and they've been clamping down on free speech for decades. The Tories as well. Tories and Labour just as bad as each other on this. But they have to control the people. But we see this all the time before dictators fall. They always become worse. And that's what Keir Starmer is doing now. He's clamping down more. He's taking rights away. He's clamping down on free speech. You cannot control the internet. It's too big. It's too vast. It's too complicated. They can attempt to do it, but they will fail. Just like the church tried to clamp down on the printing press in the 17th century. They can't do it. It'll all go underground. And it'll get worse if it goes underground.
It really will. We have to be absolutely aware of what's taking place. We really do. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Nick. We truly appreciate it. Obviously, nothing we can do can bring back these poor little girls and the horror that some of these people are going to have to live with for the rest of their lives. But what we need to do is do everything we can to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. And as you say, we're surrounded by people. There are unsteady people, and these are people who are born here, people who are coming in. But we need better protection. We absolutely do. Nick, before you leave, what is a parting shot you'd like people to know?
Personal responsibility. Stop looking at other people to fix our problems as a country. Stop thinking voting for a party or an individual is going to solve the problems. They're going to be part of the solution, but we keep giving our rights and responsibilities as Englishmen and women, we keep giving them away to other people who we think are better than us. You're English, no one's better than you. Of course, we need leaders to govern us and pull things together, but stop giving all your responsibility to other people. Take responsibility, start fixing your lives and your family and your community. And if 70 million people did that, God, this country would improve fast.
Different world, right? If people started taking care of their own backyard instead of looking at their neighbours. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, everybody. This is Nick Buckley. Take good care of yourself, Nick. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Really important stuff. Very balanced, actually. Thank you. That's really good. Emma, did you need to ask that, Sonia? Scandal in itself. What scandal was that, Emma? Explain to me. I live in a community that isn't a community, says Craig. Thanks, Nick. Yes. And thank you, Nick, says Sean. Cheers, Nick, says Jacqueline. And on and on. It's awful. Awful stuff. Absolutely devastating. I loathe the way that we have been handled. We're being handled. And Claire said, keyboard warriors need to take responsibility and stop saying, I said this, I said that. Oh, Mels, did you? What's going on? Thank you, Nick. Said Starmer is a WEFI. Everything he's done is to what the country, Martin? Let's talk about WEF before we bring in our next guest. WEF this week, of course. I'm sure many of you have seen the goings on there. I mean, what is actually going on at WEF? So let me see. There was David Beckham. Now, what will David Beckham not do to be made a sir? Remember that time when there were all these leaked documents that David Beckham was essentially working with children because he thought it would pave the way to him getting a knighthood? Do you remember that? He's still working at it. David Beckham would, I think, sell his wife and his firstborn in order to get a knighthood. It means that much to him. So he was there, and he was receiving an achievement award for his work with the UN. Do you, Mels? Good to hear it. Gary Neville was at Davos. What is even WEF? World Economic Forum, Morgan. It is where the global elites meet together. I believe that there were 200 leaders that were there this week. Trump actually spoke at WEF, although I don't think he was actually there. He was probably in the US and beamed in. But David Beckham, absolutely egregious. He said he wants his daughter Harper, 13, to have the same opportunities as her brother. But that's ridiculous because the three brothers have all had their careers bought for them by the Beckhams. David Beckham bought his wife a fashion career. Her fashion line was failing. Hand over fist. David Beckham has bought careers for his wife and his children, and he'll do it again with his daughter. It's absolutely ridiculous. This man does not represent the dispossessed. He does not. Then there was Rachel Reeves. She revealed that ministers want to increase higher skilled migration by creating more visas for people working in AI and life sciences. Do we not have people here who are already highly skilled in these things? And can we not train people up? Craig wants the same opportunities as Harper. Indeed, Teresa, they are Nepo babies through and through. Yes, they are. So Rachel Reeves was saying that as we're going through it. And let me be clear here. A lot of people are deeply concerned, obviously, about the boats that come in on a constant basis. They're not the things that I think we should be worrying about. When I interviewed, forgotten his name, Simon Elmer, he was very clear that actually the biggest problem is actually legal migration. That's where the sheer volume of numbers are. A lot of the people coming in on boats are actually the dispossessed. And so Rachel Reeves creating this whole new thing. So she told attendees at Davos that the government will publish an immigration white paper later this year. So obviously Gary Neville, he's like that he's like that footballer who is like more virtuous than anything. That's what he is. And he's there. These are people who are state assets. Be under no illusion whatsoever. And what about Mel B? Shilly Spice. I'm some of these comments I'm not following. I'm not getting it. Thank you, Dr. Kimberelli. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. Yes, Shilly Spice was there. She said, full day of Davos. Been so good to see and speak to many people. I had a great day on a panel with amazing people. And I think she was talking about domestic violence because she claims to have been in a domestic violence relationship. And Trump said he's acting with unprecedented speed, including against economic chaos, ruinous policies. He talked about executive orders to marshal all powers at their disposal to reduce costs, including a foreign aid freeze, except to Israel, of course. And I think the Ukraine. He's talking about the Green New Scam, his withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, national energy emergency, he said, to unlock the liquid gold at our feet. Oil and gas is going to make the US the world capital of artificial intelligence and crypto. He said massive tax cuts for workers and families, big tax cuts for domestic manufacturers. And he said, my message to every business is come make your product in America and we'll give you the lowest tax of any nation on earth. Wow. The power lies with the people. WEF want to cull 3/4 of humanity. Yes, blue eyes, but not anybody who attends a WEF meeting. Okay. Craig said we paid 3 times more for electricity in the UK than the USA. We absolutely do. It's shocking. Beckham was no Stephen Gerrard. Isn't Mel B skint? Says Mel's. Well, that might explain why she's rocked up there. That might explain why. Right. I'm going to bring in our next guest shortly. Be kind to me. I'm on my own, says Crazy Bunny. Soul Sound left us. Has she? Is she okay? Sonia is free thinking spice, says Hunting Swan. Hunting Swan, you are aware that I media tutored the Spice Girls and was responsible for the creation of their names. You are aware of that. Except I refused to say Scary Spice. I wasn't going to call the only mixed race female in the band Scary Spice. I thought that was atrocious. Where's my book? Talking all about this. I can flash this in front of the screen to prove it to you all. But yeah, WEF has done what WEF always does. And it's a big club. And the chances are, if you're watching this, you're not in it. That's scary, says Craig. She had to prove Eddie Murphy was her baby's father. Yes, she's been busy girl. Busy girl indeed. Alice says quite correctly, I believe that. Invest in the English. Invest in. We've got enough people here already. 7 million, I think, in London alone, isn't it? Come on, people. Marcuson, is that true? The debt clock now has a DOG savings clock. Is that true? We need cheap energy to productive and boost the economy in the UK. I think that Doge, which is obviously what Elon Musk is responsible for, isn't it? The Department for Cutting Bureaucracy was the idea behind it. They're bringing in 20 people to work with Elon Musk. Old boss, same as the new boss. Coconut Spice. Martin, I don't even know where to go with that. I don't know where to go with that. That does sound vaguely unfortunate. Hi, what does TBN mean? WEF reminds me of Spectre in James Bond films. I see. Got you. Let's bring in our next guest. Let's talk about faith and the protection of children and all of those good and important things. Let's do that, shall we? I think so. I think it's time to do it. And we've brought Michael back again. How are you, Michael?
Hello, Sonia. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you with us, Michael Tovar. And Michael is joining us from the US. And I'm very grateful for him for being prepared to do that. What ungodly hour is it there, Michael? Probably that's not the best expression in the world.
Going on 5.
Going on 5. Well, thank you for being here. I very much appreciate it. When you contacted me and you showed me your website, and I thought that'd be really interesting to have a conversation with Michael. So, Michael, talk to us first of all about why you called your website WeSpankedGod.org. What is that about?
Oh, there's so many stories. The writing is not only my personal memoir. I'm 69 years old, but it's really tied directly in with your conversations with Earl and Martin and Nick and all of your wonderful participants, the people who write in their comments. Sonia, I'm reading a book by Geoffrey Wellham, and his book is called First Light. It's his accounts of flying a Spitfire. Remember those little planes? And I want to tell you right off the bat to give us perspective here. Sonia, The Battle of Britain is going on right now. You people are into it. The infiltration from the continent, all these factors, even in your royalty, the family from the continent, etc. It's all been built up, as you say. It's been a progression or a digression for decades, and you're into it. It's happening. Europe is in a quandary. France is down, just as it was before the Battle of Britain. You guys are into it. And of course, we in the United States are going to back you up, those who have a good heart. So yeah, let's talk about the heart.
Well, let's talk about light and dark before we get there, because obviously many people feel that what we're engaged in is a spiritual war. Michael, would you agree with that?
Yes, exactly the point. And your three little princesses, which are now not living anymore, are now seeing the light. Yes, you have to read my essay. Read it for free at wespankedgod.org. Hear the story of how I got into it. One of our Americans spent his first 7 years in your country, Samuel Martin. He's part of the story. He helped me start understanding what's going on. My writing will help you and us understand the whys, the wherefores, the hows of what is going on, so we may fortify ourselves to understand who we are, why we are, and what we have to do. And once again, you guys are doing the pragmatic aspect. I personally relate to Jeff Wellham here. He's up in the airplane. He's so aloof. He loves it, of course. He has the mind to be a pilot, but he knows he's completely dependent on his ground crew, his mechanics, his flight operations officers, everything. And so read the information. And yes.
Tell us a little bit. So you were born in the Philippines, is that correct? Citizen of the USA.
Yes.
And then you were born again in Canada. And
Correct.
that was when you found Christianity?
Yeah, God knows those who are his, and he finds us. He has found us, from the time we were conceived and before. Yeah, my father was working in the American Embassy in the Philippines and in all the countries of Southeast Asia. And we spoke about that personally through emails this past week. I had a hard time of it as a child. Neglected. I called myself a suburban orphan. I know that American children can be as lonely and destitute as the worst ghetto child, who often have adult people in their life. I had no one. My mother was under the table. My father was over the table with liquor. And I had no access to adult supervision. My father had faith in God, and he gave us to the angels. He certainly prayed the covering of the angels over his children. And once again, read the story. But yes, we have to focus on love as an antidote to the fear which these people are feeding on. The people in question, the people causing problems, they have no life in themselves, and they have no life on this earth, colloquially speaking. They've got no life.
They're like shadows, aren't they?
And it's their problem. Like Martin or someone said, the fellow was 17, not quite 18, who did the murdering of the little princesses. And he cannot blame the parents. But then once again, he also said the parents have to be held accountable also for neglecting their children. These issues is what I write about. But we do have to connect with the child in ourselves. Without that, we're nothing, because that's how God operates. He expects us to be childlike, not to think we can handle it all, because we immediately start messing up. You know,
I like to invite a variety of guests on here. I'm not religious, and I'm very spiritual though, but I'm not religious. I don't subscribe to any sort of religion that is out there. But I think it's always very interesting listening to people about their faith, and I think it's really important. And one of the criticisms I've faced before is that I've talked to all manner of people, but I haven't talked to actual Christians. Well, here's one right in front of you here, people. Okay. And there will be people saying, why have we got somebody on here preaching the gospel? But that's the whole point about Wake Up. It is about variety. I think that's really important. Talk to me about the heart, Michael. You wanted to talk about that earlier.
All right. I've got a story for you. I'm low income. I'm crippled in my right arm since 1968. So I'm low income. I have less than $600 a month. I paint houses on the side using natural paint now. Now, my story is this, Sonia. I go to a food bank every week. It's been operating for decades and very well run. But they put a sign on each rack of food that says you may take 1 or 2 per family. And when no one's looking, I take 2 or 3. I'm a bit of a kleptomaniac. Now, I haven't done anything like that since I was a teenager. And here I am, a responsible, mature, educated, experienced, so-called Christian. And I'm having to look at myself and say, hey, you're a thief.
Wow.
But that's just a little example. God is working on us. He's trying to get us prepared for his holy presence.
How are you being prepared for his holy presence by admitting the fact that you're stealing from a food bank?
And first thing this morning, I wrote it. It was last night. I wrote an email. Couldn't sleep any further this week. Happened on Tuesday. To the director of the food bank and told them what happened.
Oh.
One of the people, the volunteers, came up behind me and said, "You're only supposed to take 1 of those." And I made as if to look at the sign and say, "Oh, was there a sign on this rack also?" It was the rack which had a whole bunch of articles on it, which you could rather, it was I call it the hodgepodge rack. But God is preparing us for his holy presence. He's the one that made birds and babies and the wonder of a child. I did want to tell you that last week at the library, I noticed the little hearts up on the wall there that the children from school had put on to answer the question, why do I like the library? And one little princess had written, I like the library because it helps me invent my imagination.
Yes, indeed.
So beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful.
We've got to be on that level. We can never forget our children.
That level of purity. Absolutely,
Yes.
that level of purity. I get that. And I love that as well. But Michael, there's so, I actually enjoy reading the Bible. I should tell you, I think in parts it's a very good read. And I think that some of the Psalms are absolutely wonderful. But also the other thing that often captures me is this whole idea that we will be presented with false prophets on the world stage. Is that happening?
There's 2 schools of thought on eschatology, on end time events. Brian Godawa in Hollywood apparently is a Christian. I haven't seen his films. I read his book saying that all this end time information is completely contrary to historical fact, which all got prophecy fulfilled with Israel 2,000 years ago. Take a look at it yourself. I try not to pay too much mind to it. Your mention of Psalms, I would go absolutely loony without the Psalms. I have about 45 minutes of Psalms memorized, which I repeat as I walk through the woods on the mountain here. I couldn't do without it. I do it several times a week. It keeps me rooted and grounded, of course. So yes, reciting poetry.
Tell us a favorite Psalm that you take comfort from in this crazy world.
I could give you the numbers. Psalm 90 is the first one. It's the Song of Moses. He really speaks for all of us, Psalm 90. And I'm not a mathematically skilled person, so I'll mix up my numbers. They are numbers. 90 goes into 62, or rather it's 116, 117, 138, 62, 139, 63, 50, and
that's a lot of numbers, Michael.
and
No
then Psalm
quotes.
23.
Any quotes?
And well, it's all in Spanish because
Oh.
I'm getting used to learning the language of my grandfather, whom I never met, a Colombian coffee farmer. That is a story that's in the essay.
You read your Bible in Spanish?
No. I learned these Psalms in Spanish. You learn that I had a lot of time. You see, we need people. We need the hermit to be out there spending time with, look at India. They put money down to feed their holy men who are sitting there seemingly doing nothing.
True.
And I spent a lot of time. I had 16 years alone on the edge of the wilderness when God first laid his hand on me at age 20. And to read his Bible, completely get immersed in it. And the only things else I would read were the French-Canadian agricultural magazines, in which I got immersed in the language. So after 16 years, people were surprised that I was American when I would speak with them because I had absorbed the language. Let me take a swig of water here.
And tell me, what was the experience of God putting his hand on you? Talk to us about that.
It's what he does for every single one of us. He wants to do it if we will acknowledge him. And I was desperate. It was a matter of life or death with me. You'll read it quickly in my essay.
I think that is often what happens, isn't it? People reach a point when they can no longer take.
I don't know. I don't know what other people do. All I know is it was a matter of life and death. By age 20 in Bangkok, Thailand, I was trying to get to New Zealand. I met an American business out there who had bought a farm in Quebec, Canada. So I did the roundabout on the planet, and England didn't want New Zealand didn't want anything to do with me. They had enough of their pot smoking young teenagers. But I ended up in Quebec, Canada, stayed 16 years. The man who gave me the job, his son was already there. We agreed in God that we would stick it out together and be friends and milk cows. And it was a wonderful experience, but it was an opportunity for me personally to stop being close to dying. I've been close to death since I've been born. Serious closest brushes with death. You only take 5 minutes into my essay, you learn what exactly happened and how I really had to focus on my Creator and my Savior. He's as close as it's wonderful to be seeing you right here. As you're saying, we're beaming down and beaming up with this technology, but he's even closer than that. He's right between our joints and our marrow, and it's wonderful. The only question is, do we recognize him personally, personal Savior per se? And I completely understand where you're coming from. You say you've been in the left, and I've actually reached out to the Freedom from Religion Foundation. They haven't responded to me. I even learned about the Satanic Temple, who are actually reaching out to children to prevent the fundamentalist Christians from telling them about hell.
That sounds weird. Well, no, it doesn't sound weird. It's the usual kind of stuff, isn't it? It sounds a bit like trafficking there.
I'm off anything that's working for truth and goodness, even through the Satanic Temple, whether they know it or not, is wonderful.
How do we see the devil in the world, though? Because obviously some human beings are just rotten. They're wicked. They're evil. But how do you see the devil in the world?
Well, I saw it in myself when I threw a brick through a living room window at the age of 9. That's early in the story. I knew I had a problem. And it wasn't long after that, I started kneeling down by my bedside. I got my own bedroom a few years later and had privacy with God. A prayer closet is supposed to be a hidden place in your house where you can have a one-on-one with the person that you have to deal with. As the Apostle Paul says, he with whom we have to do. And we all have to do that. And of course, it's the place of our liberation. He's our Father. And I also tell, and I earn a lot of, I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot of enemies in Christians, saying he's also our mother. He's our mama, but mother is private. We don't talk about our mother or our sister or wife or our daughters in public. but we certainly think about them. And in that realm is the realm of spirit and God, and he's the one who created us. So I've covered all the bases. It's the finest piece of Christian exegesis I've ever read. And so go for it.
But
I know what's out there.
the important thing for you is about the protection of children, right?
That's the altar of sacrifice that's going on.
What does that mean? The altar of sacrifice. What does that mean?
Well, you allude to it on your show in the few minutes I've listened to you the past week or two. Children have been laid into for all these 6,000 years.
Oh, I see. Yeah, like they're chattel, like nothing, as if they can just.
Well,
be
it's the
thrown away
energy,
and traded.
apparently. You know, even the sodomy, the pedophilic sodomy that goes on. Apparently, they draw energy from the children, whether they're doing that or they're eating them. They get this terrible energy. It's as bad can be, but apparently that's the physical counterpart to recognizing the beauty of children, as we're doing.
Michael, before you leave us, just tell us what you want people to know about you and your faith.
Well, my family looked at me several times when I was a little fella and said, I will grow up to either be a baby doctor or a priest, because I had such a heart for children. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I had such a hard time of it and I could relate to children and the handicapped. But we've all got to be ourselves and realize God loves us. He's preparing for eternity, an eternal relationship with us. Every single one of us. You know, one of my expressions, the first little book I wrote is just one-line expressions. One of them is, God invented all the interesting cultures of the world, but he had nothing to do with religion. It had nothing to do. Real religion is what Jesus' brother James said, what's true religion?
I'm going to have to let you go, Michael, because we've got so much else to cover in the show. But thank you for joining us from the US. Have a good rest.
Thank you for having me on,
Take good care of yourself.
You too, bye.
And take good care of yourself. Everybody, Michael Tova. Tova. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Michael. Yes. There's Michael. And I see there's some people in the comments not that impressed. Listen, the thing about me, as you know, is I'm prepared to talk to many, many people from different areas of life. And I think that's important. Vape King says thank you. Shug says thank you. Be kind, folks. And Dr. Kim Pirelli says, I mute all religious twaddle. See, the thing is I don't think it is twaddle. I don't think it's, I mean, I'm not religious, obviously, but I think that there's a lot of really good stuff that can be drawn from the Bible. And I do. I take the good stuff. I'm interested in the good stuff. And good to hear all opinions, says the Blue Nomad. Good points, Michael. So actually, Michael, there are people also agreeing with you. Right, let me have a look at the things that I think are interesting. I want to give you my take on the news, see what I can bring up as I'm doing this. One of the things I want to talk about is, did anyone see the completely scrumptious, groveling apology that Rupert Murdoch made to Prince Harry? If you haven't, please search it out. Please search it out. Let me see if I can just find it. I want to find it. Because this is important. This could lead to some really interesting stuff taking place. Now, if I got, here we go, Sherborne and Watson. This is David Sherborne. And this is outside court. So this was on Wednesday. There's David Sherborne. That is one of Prince Harry's barristers. Next to him is Tom Watson, former Labour MP. It was Tom Watson who raised up the issue of paedophiles within the British parliamentary system. And so I think this whole court case is really interesting. So now, first of all, don't get me wrong. I can barely stand Harry a lot of the time, but I do like the way he has taken on the British newspapers because it is exposing them. So on Wednesday, he reached settlement against Rupert Murdoch. Now, we don't know the exact amount, but I am being told by contacts that is in excess of £10 million. And what happened was Prince Harry has already won damages against Mirror Group newspapers. And then he's reached this settlement with rival publisher Rupert Murdoch. And this was for action. So this is why I've brought up this image of David Sherborne, because this is really interesting. First of all, Harry said, I'm going to trial because I want everything to come out, and then he settles, right? But David Sherborne said this was settled so that the full picture could be prevented from coming out. Well, both sides have to agree to settlement. So Harry has agreed to this. Harry has agreed to the full picture not coming out. We must be clear about that. However, having said that, I still think that this lawsuit is worthy. And here's why. So what we have, obviously, during that period of time, it covers a 16-year period. And what David Sherborne says is that this was about unlawful news gathering. This was for actions known by editors, executives, and those at the top of Rupert Murdoch's publications, which presumably also includes Rupert Murdoch. And clearly, the Murdoch board was far too worried about what may come out at trial, as they should be. And I think it's interesting because what we're now seeing, for example, is C19 backtracker Piers Morgan was editor of both the Daily Mirror and the News of the World in the 90s. Daily Mirror, Harry's already settled damages, already settled with them. And now the News of the World and the Sun. And the thing about Piers Morgan is what he did immediately was he set to attack Harry. Oh, he's getting a settlement now. What about him intruding on the royal family? No, Piers Morgan. What about you intruding? Is there a story to be told here? I make no allegations against Piers Morgan. I'm sure he's as angry as everyone else that this has happened. And really, honestly, rather than cursing Harry's settlement, I'd expect him to be calling for an investigation into these awful, immoral practices of unlawful news gathering that was used and which cast a dreadful light on journalism. Same with former The Sun and News of the World showbiz editor Dan Wootton. Now, I appreciate that both Morgan and Dan Wootton have recast themselves as holier-than-thou YouTube journalists, but they have a history and nobody should be above scrutiny. And once again, as with Piers Morgan, I'm not saying that Dan Wootton was involved, but put it this way. If I was in those environments as those two men were, when all of this was said to have been taking place, then I would want to know what happened. I would want to drill down on it. I would want to investigate, but none of them will. But what I think is interesting is I think that this absolutely, in part, explains both Wootton and Morgan's absolute hatred of Harry and Meghan. We already know that part of Morgan's hatred of Meghan is she gave him the blow off, pushed him off, not interested in him, right? She went for a drink with him. And even though he has a wife, she went for a drink with him. And then he put her in a cab and she went off to meet Prince Harry, and the rest is history, blah, blah, blah. And ever since, Piers Morgan has just loathed her, hated her, obsessed about her, used a mainstream media platform literally to obsess and stalk another human being. And as I say, I've got no time for either Harry or Meghan, but I do like the fact that they are exposing the British media and the people who've worked in it. So I do think that both Morgan and Wootton, rather than continually spend their time looking at what Prince Harry and Meghan are doing, should tell us about their times at the Mirror Group newspapers and at News International. That's all. Gina, Morgan is absolutely obsessed with hating Meghan. It's disgusting. Stephen Hall, we cannot forget what Morgan did during C19. And he's backtracking now. I was only following the science. He said it's not for a journalist to follow the science. Our job is not to follow the science. Our job is to examine whether the science is correct. But I'm sorry, I have to say, going back to the apology that Murdoch had to issue, it was delicious to read. I'm going to read a bit of it. NGN, which is the newspaper group, also offers a full and unequivocal apology to the Duke of Sussex for the phone hacking, surveillance and misuse of private information by journalists and private investigators instructed by them at the News of the World. That would have hurt Rupert Murdoch to have allowed his lawyers to have crafted that. Would have hurt him. And you know what I like? I like seeing Rupert Murdoch hurt. Yes. No, Finbar, don't give a flying about Harry and Meghan, but I do give a flying about what has gone on in British media. That's what I do give a flying about. They're not called the gutter press for nothing. Why do we still have Piers Morgan? I'm glad I don't see him. I know. Piers is not very bright. What Piers is very, very good at sticking his finger in the air and ascertaining which way the wind is blowing. That's what he's good at. But mark my words, this is monumental what took place on Wednesday. And I understand people have contacted me saying that the police are going to be investigating this. And actually, the Metropolitan Police have said at this moment they're not, but they should be investigating it because crimes have taken place. And potentially people still exist who were aware of those crimes. And Rebecca Brooks is also somebody who needs to be investigated for this. She's very, very senior executive at Rupert Murdoch's newspapers, good friend of politicians, Rebecca Brooks. These people need to be investigated. That's what needs to happen. They need to be investigated. Simple stuff. It really isn't hard. And I find it astonishing that we appear to be so reluctant to do it. Boycott the media, says Martin. Boycott the media. Murdoch and co need brought down for the biased commentary they put out to the public. Let us not forget what Murdoch has brought to this world. Such hatred and division. The sexualization of young females, right? The denigration of working class people. Rupert Murdoch hates working class people as much as Keir Starmer does. Can't stand Brooks, says Christine. Millie Dowler, yes, Alice, all of this stuff, absolutely outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Science always tries to disprove the facts. It's a job. Fred, it is a job. It is a job. And it is not for us as journalists to say, I followed the science. As I say, your job is to examine the science, not follow it. Right. I'm going to bring in some of Neil's images. Thank you, Neil, for contacting me with some of your geoengineering images. Let me just bring them to the stage. It's always important that we keep an eye on what is going on in our skies. And I did say the other week, didn't I, that there just seemed to be such a lack of actual chemtrails. And then it was full moon. And then actually my daughter took pictures which actually showed them all across the moon. And it's just the weather conditions where you're not seeing them as clearly as normal. But this is what Neil sent in. I think these are interesting pictures. Neil said, hello, Sonia. I took the couple of attached photos yesterday morning at around 8:30 a.m. Clear blue skies in Bedfordshire were being sprayed. So by mid-morning, it was no surprise to find a grey gloom had descended, which continues to exist today. It seems so obvious what is happening, but still most people don't see it. I'd like to think there is something we could do to force an explanation as to what is being sprayed above us. Perhaps demand answers from the council and withhold council tax unless a satisfactory answer is provided. Best wishes, Neil. I like that idea, right? There's been a lot of fog, says Phobal. Yes. Too windy for the chemtrails today. What's the weather like where you are? Zoe, what's the weather like in Scotland? Another storm. What do we say to the people who say there's just more planes nowadays? Some of these people believe in some conspiracies. Well, you can show them that there is a clear and distinct difference between what is a condensation trail and what is a chemical trail. And there is a clear distinction. A contrail dissipates. As you see the plane going up, ascending, you see the trail coming behind them, and it just gets thinner and thinner and it disappears. That's it. The contrails disappear. Exactly, John. That's exactly what happens. But the chemtrail hangs heavy in the air, and you can actually see it. I mean, you can see it very much. These are very clear graphic pictures of all the crisscrossing and everything that's taking place there. But I think the bottom picture, the very thick one, very clearly is a chem. Shug, what are you saying there? We have all gotten used to drones delivering news and conversation. When we see people talking emotionally, we view them as unhinged. All part of the programming they broadcast and channel to you. Shug, are you in reference to our last guest? Is that what you're saying? I agree with you. He's not unhinged. I don't believe for a second that Michael is unhinged. Not for a second. I believe that he is deeply into his faith. Claire said there were no trails when they wanted to keep us in during a week freeze from one night of snow, kept elderly prisoner, snow plows, pushed the snow onto pavements around me. Oh, Claire, I think I've got a picture from you somewhere. I wonder if if I haven't prepared it, I'll do it on Monday if you don't mind me showing it. I'd like to. No problem. I agree, Craig. They will throw the book at those who refuse to pay council tax first. Oh, yes, they will. 1 week of dense fog, people experiencing headaches. I see them here, chemtrails. Harry Sissons, don't know who these people are. It's heavy melt all their spray, and the storm is seeding is due to the jet stream. The news is mocking you, says Plane Station. Chemtrails cause the blanket cloud as they spread. The Met Office admit planes cause clouds. This is true, Jan. They do. And the thing is, I understand your frustration, Neil. I absolutely do. I wouldn't advise you to withhold your council tax. They will come after you like a bullet. But Maz, even when I didn't live near an airport, I saw loads of trails still. I mean, I live near Heathrow now, but even then I saw loads. I definitely did. Let me just have a look. What else have I not covered? Listen, I'm going to have to talk about this because I'm so wound up about this. Okay. Oh, and also, by the way, it did not escape my attention this week that we were told that beloved British actress Pauline Quirke has dementia. And then we were also told that murderer Axel Rudakubana, obviously who killed the 3 little girls in Southport, that he attended her drama school. We were told that in the same week. You can see why people think we're living in a psyop, right? Kind of looks a bit odd, isn't it? Like evolving news. Really interesting. Anyway, I want to talk about a lunatic. Her name is Kim Ledbetter. I'm sure you've heard of her before. I've talked about her before. She is the sister of murdered MP Jo Cox. It is Kim Ledbetter who is leading the charge for the assisted dying. Let me bring up an image of her in Parliament this week, right? Bring up an image of her in Parliament this week. I loathe this woman with a passion, and I think that she's dangerous, actually. I must have this image of her. Where have I put it? Where have I put it? There it is. Okay, got it. Now, so the thing with Kim Ledbetter, last November, right? There was the first reading of the assisted dying bill. Okay, at the moment, assisted dying is absolutely not legal in the UK, but you've had high-profile names like Esther Ranson who have been pushing for the assisted dying to be made legal. And then Esther Ranson, of course, I reported on her last week where she came out at Christmas after the November first reading, came out at Christmas saying, I'm so glad to be alive. We discovered all this and I'm really enjoying my life. And it's like, you piece of filth. You piece of filth. You're so glad to be alive after you've put so much extraordinary pressure on the British government to make this legal. Okay. So anyway, so Kim Ledbetter, let me bring her in. Here she is. Look, there you go. Very positive first formal meeting of the terminally ill adults end of life bill committee. Another session of oral evidence was timetabled to ensure the committee will hear from a wide range of witnesses, both orally and in writing, for this next stage of scrutiny and debate. The only problem is Kim Ledbetter and the people behind her do not want scrutiny. They do not want scrutiny. When introducing the bill, she told the House of Commons originally that voting for it was not so much a vote for assisted suicide as a vote to continue the debate. She said it is a vote to subject the bill to line-by-line scrutiny in committee. And honestly, the problem is it's got here now. And guess what? At the first meeting of the committee this week, she changed all that and showed everyone that scrutiny was absolutely not part of the plan. First of all, we learned that she had introduced a last-minute motion, right? And it would be behind closed doors. Behind closed doors, this has to be in the public domain. We need to know what is going on here. Journalists and the public would be asked to leave. Hansard, which is the official recorder of what goes on in public, would be left blank. What have these people got to hide? What is this woman who I call the laughing assassin got to hide? Parliament TV had a message which is terminally ill adults bill is currently in private. How can something this vital be in private, right? It is shocking. It's legal killing, GCR. Absolutely. Absolutely it is. But there's more. There's more. Absolutely there's more. Okay. And one of the things is, I don't know if you heard the MP Kit Malthouse. Well, he's now literally, as the Right to Life UK is pointing out, he's saying the quiet part out loud. Okay. He's a sponsor of Kim Ledbetter's assisted suicide bill, and he suggests that legalized assisted suicide would save the NHS the cost of expensive treatment for dying people. Right? He maintains that current support for the terminally ill is costing the taxpayer. Come on, people. Come on, people. We know what they're doing. We know what they're doing. They see our dying as useless eaters to be got rid of quickly and in the least expensive way possible. Okay. And here's the other thing is that the committee voted. I don't even want to read this. I cannot believe what I'm reading, but the committee voted 14-8 against hearing evidence from the Royal College of Psychiatrists. Both ministers on the committee voted against it. They don't want scrutiny. They cannot afford scrutiny. Okay? This is really worrying. Yes, they're already doing it in Canada. Yes, it's murder. In other words, legalized killing. Yes, Mary, that is exactly what's going on here. And what's even more concerning, as Right to Life UK point out, is that the committee that will scrutinize the assisted suicide bill has a majority of supportive MPs, MPs who are supportive of legalizing the murder of British citizens. What kind of people? They will go after learning disabilities next, Frankie. They absolutely will. KL is an establishment tool. We know how this works now. It's tried and tested. Yes, Mels, that's a fact. They want to save some money. Varying redhead. That's what they want to do. It's disgusting and chilly, Kiwi. It's disgusting and chilly. They fear scrutiny. You know, anybody who fears scrutiny cannot stand up behind what it is they're proposing. That is a fact. But the fact to make this private, that Hansard will be left blank. This is so unusual. The fact that it's being allowed, though, because we know that Keir Starmer is supportive of this bill. So, no, I do not trust these people. Kim Ledbetter is a problem. I played you that video of the day after her sister had been murdered, we were told, by Thomas Mayer. Which I meant, by the way, as an aside, I meant to talk about Thomas Mayer with Nick Buckley earlier, because when Thomas Mayer was said to have killed Joe Cox, we knew immediately about him, like within hours. It was all over the press. But we were fed a child's picture of Axel Rudakubana right up to this week, as well as always court illustrations, which my friend Charlotte pointed out. Why, incidentally, was Axel Rudakubana holding a mobile phone in court? Anybody know the answer to that? Because one of the court illustrations actually pictured that. It's very bizarre. But yeah, so again, that's two-tier Keir, isn't it, for you? It's two-tier Keir. But yes, so after the Thomas Mayer scenario, but there are visual images, there is footage, literal footage of Kim Ledbetter and her equally odd mother, like paying tribute to her sister, and they literally look like they're smiling. They literally look like they're smiling. I struggle with it. I've put it up before. And they will target the most vulnerable. See you later, Jan. Take care. Closed family courts. Well, they're hoping to change closed family courts as well, Teresa. That's hoping to change this year, but we shall see. Because let me just say quickly, I want to just finish this Ledbetter thing. So yes, we cannot trust them. Whatever the outcome, Ledbetter. She's the laughing assassin. She's determined to make it legal for people to kill themselves in the UK. What a piece of work. What an absolute piece of work. This woman has been put into place. She's already got an MBE. An MBE for what? On the first day that Keir Starmer entered Parliament as the Prime Minister, guess who his guests were? Her parents. He had drinks on the Parliament terrace with Kim Ledbetter, her mum and dad, Joe Cox's parents. Weird people. She's chilling, Sharon. She's chilling. Martin, I don't know why he's got a phone, but he definitely has, and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. Why do we have illustrations in this day and age? I mean, the other thing is, I think that we should, because we're now obviously getting to hear what the judges are saying. This is quite a new advent, isn't it, of seeing the judges sentencing. But I also think that we should see the people in the dock as well. Yes, I do. Yes. Why doesn't she volunteer herself? Show us how great it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. They only need these extreme measures because the system is collapsing around them. Right. I got you. What did I just say I was going to briefly talk about? Forgotten. It goes that quickly. People, because at this moment in time, I'm sitting in front of two screaming bright lights. And sometimes they dazzle me. Right. What else do I want to talk about? I want to talk about this, and this may touch some of your hearts. Absolutely not. Parents must be warned. Must be warned about what? Yeah, this may touch some of you, and I think the timing of this is very interesting. A dear friend of mine lost her dog yesterday, and I have been quite upset this week. And one of the reasons that I've been quite upset, let me see if I can bring this image to the screen, if I've still got it. I think I have. Maybe I haven't. I'm sure I saw it there just a second ago, but hey, you know how these things go. But there was a study done this week, okay, and I'm sure many of you are going to relate to this. And the study that was done this week was about how some people are so impacted by the death of their dogs that they're more impacted than by humans leaving them, right? I know that's true. This study hit me particularly hard because, as I say, this week actually marks the 5th anniversary of my lovely, lovely, lovely Bliss dog. And I say this very seriously. That dog was a soulmate. That dog was my soulmate. I absolutely love and adore my crazy, crazy dog who is with us now. I adore her deeply and dearly. But my Bliss, I had a different kind of relationship with. We were incredibly close, and I'm annoyed that I can't find the images of her because I'd love to be able to show you what she looked like. I'll probably show you on Monday then. But she was a little Westie, and I loved her with all my heart. And this week, when I read that study, I was absolutely gutted. And I know that people get incredibly pained when they lose their dogs. It is very, very hard. They are like toddlers, Andy. The more people I meet, the more I love my dog, says Total Nutter, because dogs don't imitate loyalty. Pets become part of your family. Can't fathom my 2 rescues leaving us. See, I knew that you would relate to this, people. And when I saw that study, I literally burst into tears because I just remembered the last moments of my doggo. And it was so incredibly profound when Bliss left us, because we knew she was going. We didn't realize she was going to go there and then. My daughter was holding her. Bliss had come into our house with my daughter holding her, and she left this world with my daughter holding her, and she was in my daughter's arms. And I was just so devastated. I feel sad even repeating this now, but I want to, because I know a lot of people relate to it, and I'm sending out love to anybody who's experiencing this right now. And I just looked at my doggo and I said, if you have to leave, go. My dog literally died in my daughter's arms there and then. Very painful. Yes, I miss my cats too. Gary, your dog is your soulmate. You love her, right? Yes, Ven, I've got you. Dogs are not our children. That is the problem. We can't respect them for being what they are. They are our friends, our companion. Shazza knows this pain too. So painful. I loved her with all my heart, and I still do. Nothing has changed. Those 5 years have changed nothing for me. I still miss her dearly. And I just sometimes wonder whether it's like a curse or a blessing, what they do to us, right? In some respects, because they're here for such a short period of time. My Bliss was not here for 12 years. Craig's cat was his soulmate. Yeah. Does it resonate deeply, GCR? I got you. It's just, do you know what? And I just want to send that message really out to anybody who is experiencing that, right? How incredibly painful it can be. And I get you. And I agree with that study. And for so long, we have been told, right, our feelings about our pets have been dismissed as if they don't count, as if they're not worth anything. But these become our life, our absolute lifeline. They do. Actually, I've got it. I've got the image and I'm going to show you her because I want to show you what my Bliss bub looks like. Here it is. And they become so much a huge and massive part of your life that when they leave us, it's absolutely devastating. Here she is. Absolutely glorious. And this was the sweetest, sweetest soul. This baby was the sweetest soul. I'll probably have to take her off the screen very, very quickly before I start crying. Cats might heal you when they purr. I'm glad I have not seen the term fur baby. I don't do that. Animals are a blessing, an absolute blessing. Post Colt said, my boy came into my life to make me feel loved for the first time. I know, my little blub. And she was just so sweet. She just understood me. And like I said, I love and adore our lovely so very, very much. Right. And would not change her for the world. And everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And love makes me laugh every day. She's the funniest dog in the world. But there was just something about Bliss that connected with me on such a deep level. I'm going to have to stop talking about her because I will actually start crying. And you can hear me actually starting to get a bit weepy. So I have to be careful there. Yes, when we first got Bliss, and I wrote an article actually for the Daily Express about the power of dogs to heal us, because I'd started to research it and I discovered that not only do dogs detect cancer, they can smell it, but they also are huge. They're hugely used by people in terms of like depression. And because the very act of having to get up every day and take dogs out and take care of dogs can really aid people with depression. Yeah, they can. She's beautiful. I love her. They do love unconditionally. And that's why we love them so much. So cute, Lila's. So cute. She's gorgeous. She's absolutely gorgeous. And as I say, it's not to take anything away from my lovely who is here today, but I just wanted to remember her. And I want to send love out to anybody who is going through anything similar at this moment in time, because I know how painful it is. I know how painful it is. So I want to start thinking about dogs can spot a wrong un. Hey, listen, total nutter, let me tell you this. My sister-in-law always said to me, be careful of anybody who doesn't like dogs. That's what my sister-in-law always used to say. And she was absolutely right. I actually seriously have learnt in all my years that anybody that doesn't like dogs is a problem. But more importantly than that, anybody that my dog takes against is a problem. And the great thing about our Lovely, Bliss was like so pure of heart, right? She wasn't a guard dog. Lovely is a guard dog. Lovely was found on the streets of Romania, and she's a part mountain dog. She's like a Romanian shepherd part. Big dog, small, short, but big. She's a big dog. She's classified as a big dog, and you do not mess with her. And she's like, when we go out walking, she is watching everybody, checking that they're not going to do anything to me. Thank you, Em. Appreciate that for a box of tissues. Thank you. Bless your heart. Would you, Emma? You'd be lonely if it wasn't for your boy Luther. But yeah, so completely different characters. And that's the other thing, of course, is that all animals are different. They're as unique as human beings, all as unique as human beings. So I want to just send love to anybody who is going through anything today where they may well have lost one of their loved ones. She's protecting me, Randy. She certainly is. You get it, do you, Craig? My dog loves everyone. She loves attention, says Cappuccino. Mike, so I got rid of her. Who did you get rid of? Oh, I see. Do you have some problems? They are true guardians. Yes, they really are. They genuinely are. Love them. Love them very, very much. Right. I want to talk about a number of things. One, I want to talk about the power of being a disruptor. So important. But I also want to just start this by saying we need more heart in this world. We genuinely need more heart in this world. Our world is predominantly being run by businessmen and businesswomen who see everything through the prism of a sales pitch and the subsequent financial gain. And they view us only as a commodity to be experimented on, to be tracked and traced and sold to the highest bidder. That is the world that we are currently living in. We are seen really as nothing but a number. And the problems in the world could be solved if we had more heart and less head. We need a return to caring, but we also need this. We need more disruptors. We need more disruptors, people who are prepared to say, no way am I accepting that. I am not accepting that status quo. That is not acceptable for me. Bottom line is this. I don't believe for a second that you are here to color within the lines. And by that, I mean, you can make your own rules. Your life in itself is a statement. The fact that you were born in the first place is a miracle. It's not an accident. It's against so many odds. So therefore, surely we're not here to follow stupid commands and orders, right? And there are stupid commands and orders out there. And there's going to be a whole lot of new stupid commands and orders that are coming through. And I considered, obviously, a lot of what we've been through over the last 4 years to be stupid commands and orders that were there to be ignored. And I think that's the most important thing, right? I'm not talking about being antisocial. We all have to adhere to certain societal codes in order to be able to get on with each other, right? So I'm not talking about being a disruptor by getting on a bus and sitting on somebody's lap or anything like that. No, that's just being an idiot, right? No, what I'm talking about is following your own codes and disrupting the status quo. I don't want to leave this world until we properly disrupt this world, okay? What is being a disruptor? They often talk about it in business, but it's more than that, right? They're people, disruptors are people who question how things are done. They test strategies, okay? They look at what works in the existing market. This is what they do in business, but there's no reason why you can't transfer that over to your own life. And the thing is, the power of being a disruptor lies in the ability to drive progress forward. Okay, it's about innovation, about challenging existing norms, sparking new ideas, and forcing adaptation. Right? Don't settle. I hate the word settle. It has a I have a problem with it because please, plane station, keep the 2 meter distance was one of the most obviously stupid. Somebody actually put it on a wall down here and they did the distance in chalk marks. We are magicians that can bend reality. Don't believe it, then it won't happen. Intuition, this is exactly right. George didn't comply. I am a disruptor, says Gwyneth. It's so important to be a disruptor. You challenge the status quo. You foster innovation. You create new things, new markets, right? And the thing is that you will improve your life because a lot of people are disruptors, but they've been taught to comply. Our education system is also all about compliance, about fitting in, about not standing out. Damn it! You were born to stand out. Stand out. And the thing is that when you stand up, when you disrupt, it has a ripple effect, right? It tells other people that it can be possible. And a lot of people have a resistance to change, right? They do. They're scared of the uncertainty of it. They're scared of the risks that they're going to be taking, what it might mean for them. I'm one of those people. I'll jump. And I think that's important. I think it is. You disrupt in the real world, not online. It's important. Question everything. I'm wired up different. Twisted Firestarter. Fred, if there is one song that I can relate to regarding that, it has to be Firestarter. Brilliant song. The intro is magnificent. When you stand up, you get blocked. No masks. I got you, Lisa. I'm not reading it out because you know that YouTube still had their medical misinformation policy, which incidentally, people, by the way, talking about disrupting, it's not going to disrupt anything we do here because even though Trump has given them a whole new lifeline in the US, the YouTube rules depend on where you are, what country you're in. And in the UK, we're still subject to the ridiculous tyranny of C-19. When you write the truth, it gets hidden. Yes, it does. But let's keep fighting. Let's keep fighting. Let's stand up, be counted. And the thing is, you don't have to do disruption on a grand scale. It doesn't need to be on the world stage. It can be simple as when you're in company and people say things that are inappropriate, whatever they are, whether they're just absolute bigoted or racist or sexist or just gutter talk. You can disrupt them by holding them to account. Hold them to account, right? Sometimes I have guests on here and they use language and I'm like, I should really stop them right now. But the problem is like, I don't want to stop them because I'm going to then throw them off. But I want people to know there is some language I don't approve of. As one example, one piece of terminology I cannot stand is the whole idea that there is a third world. Absolutely abhorrent terminology, right? We're all one world, but some of us are treated differently. So that's one example. And I think it's dehumanizing. I think it others people. So generally, when people use that expression these days, I generally tend to stop them if I can. Generally. School is not a good thing. Train to be compliant. When you do that, they threaten. What's that? Who was that? I went on very long walks during C-19. I wasn't going to stay at home to put on weight and get unhealthy. Words are spells. They are. I told a road worker he was being a see you next Tuesday because he was being a see you next Tuesday, says Markuson. Was he? And I pulled up some brilliant quotes about disrupting because I think it's so important. I think it's so important. Yeah, no, I don't agree with that expression, Claire. I think others people, and I like Claire, but I don't agree with her use of it. But you know, the thing about Wake Up, as you all know right now, is I do also believe that people should be allowed to have difference of opinion. I think one of the problems that we're facing in this world is people aren't allowed to have difference of opinion. But if it matters to you, then disrupt the hell out of it, right? It's a process. It's not an event. I disrupt as matter of course. Yes. What's that, Randy? I nearly never talk to anybody about what is going on. And when I do, they look at me as if I am an alien. That's all right. That's all right. Use your cups, mugs for opinions, says Gary. Right. We're closing in, people. We're nearly at 11 o'clock, which is great. We're actually on time for once, which is so wonderful. And There's a couple of quotes I want to read to you. One was from Tony Robbins, although I don't think he originated this, but he's been using it. And that is, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And that is the reality. Who did originally say that? He's been credited nowadays. I don't think it's him. And that is the reality. It's like that whole idea that insanity is just repeating things over and over again. And a lot of the time people have disruption in them, but they're scared. They're scared to confront others. They're scared to be seen as a troublemaker. And but I'm here to tell you that there's for me, as far as I'm concerned, there's only one life. Live it well. So, but I agree with Jay Samet, who said, disrupt yourself before someone else does. Absolutely. Take the steering wheel of your life, people. Take the steering wheel of your life. I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you wherever or however you are listening to us, whether you are on YouTube, Rumble, X, Spotify, whether you are listening live and contributing to the live chat, the liveliest of live chats, or whether you are listening on playback, however you find us, at what stage of the day, week, whenever, even if this is in 4 months' time. Thank you for being here. We very much appreciate you. Thank you very much to my two wonderful mods, of course, Crazy Bunny and Soul Sound. Thank you, Sid. I appreciate that. Never give up. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you to you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I will see you, of course, again on Monday. And before we leave,
Time to wake up with Sonia Poulton.
have a tremendous weekend, everybody. Love you lots. Thank you for being here. Take care. See you Monday.